I don't. To me, like that's what I think of. But when I'm like, oh, who's the live action Superman? Even though I'd never seen this, I was like Christopher Reeves. That's the
Reeve.
what?
Christopher Reeve.
That's fine. Whatever. I might add an S here and there. So that's neither here nor there.
The S stands for hope.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Alain.
And this is David. And today I finally watched Superman.
The movie.
Well, yeah, this is a movie podcast. I think people figured it out.
I think it's like Superman the movie, and then people are like 1978 because I think there's a lot of Superman media, especially this week the new Superman comes out, and so
I think
and
that's the
that
only other. That's the only other one that's like called Superman, though. Like everything else has something else. Like you have
correct.
Lois and Clark, Smallville,
Well, those are
Superman the
TV
animated,
shows,
Superman the man animated series, and then yeah, there's the 2006 Brandon Routh,
but
and then
that's called
this
Superman Returns and then Man of Steel. So yeah, you're right. The only thing that's called Superman is this movie, and then the one comes out this year. But
great
I think
originality, Gunn. Good
But
job.
I was originally going to be called Superman Legacy, and then he was like, "Nah, I don't want like a sub, title to it." But I think when you look this one up, the differentiation was this one is called Superman the movie, and I think because this is the first Superman movie, everything else was a TV show, comic book, whatever. I like Superman a lot, David. I don't know if you know this about me. I know the audience probably doesn't know this about me, but I have so much Superman shit in my house. I live, breathe. Like how I got through basically middle school is Smallville. And then, admittedly, I actually didn't watch this that early in my Superman obsession. It was like Smallville, and then it was the animated series, and then it was like Justice League, the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, and then this. I forget. I always get because I haven't watched them in a while. I always get this one and the second one mixed up because you actually meet Zod in this one, but the plot where like Zod attacks is in the sequel, and I think that's like kind of interesting how they are like, yeah, this is Zod, but we will deal with him later.
Yeah, so we open up meeting Zod. You have to think. Well, no, you don't have to think. Like that this was intended on being multiple movies, right? Because Zod appears in the second one. They've actually filmed a lot of Brando's stuff for both movies, and then because of legal issues, he doesn't even appear in the second one.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, he sued because his deal was like 3 or 4 million plus like some back end, and he felt like this movie made a ton of money, and he didn't really get enough back end.
I've been watching all the Supermans to like lead up to the new one this week, and I just finished the Brandon Routh one, and he's in it as Jor-El. So I don't know what kind of money they had to pay, or you can tell he's like digitally put in, but it's him and it's his voice. So I don't know legally what happened there.
No, so they because they had the extra stuff, and then they owned it, and now the legal issues were behind them. I think was Brando passed at that point? I can't remember.
2007? I don't know.
But because of that, they were able to use it because the legal issues were behind them. They were able to use it for that, what they couldn't use in two.
Well, that makes sense. Let me ask you. He passed away in 2004.
Okay, yeah, right around the same time as Christopher Reeve, like within a few months.
Damn. Well, we'll get to that in a second. What is your knowledge of Superman? Because before we recorded, we kind of talked about how Superman's origin story is almost as famous as like Jesus Christ. Is like he comes down from Krypton. Krypton's gone. It exploded. He lands in Kansas, founded by the Kents, raised, becomes Superman, works at the Daily Planet. That's what we know about Superman. Anything you learned specifically through this movie?
No, because yeah, I've watched. This is actually leads to like a side question that I had as soon as I started watching this was, who's your Superman?
All of them. No,
No,
excepting Kane. We don't announce him as
when I
Superman.
say Superman, what image pops in your head first?
I grew up with Smallville,
Okay.
and Tom Welling never becomes Superman into the last episode. So it almost feel like I'd be like almost cheating if I said Tom Welling. But
Right.
when you say Clark Kent, that's who I think of as Tom. When you say Superman, I think of Christopher. I also think of Henry Cavill because I think he's the most recent one up till now. And I think each one says something different on like which one you're referencing. I don't want to say which mood you're in, but kind of which point you're wanting to make.
So when you say Superman to me, I think of the animated series.
Oh,
So
you
I
think
watched
of like the okay, that's interesting.
because I watched all of those as a kid. That was my intro into Superman. I never read the comics. I have not seen Superman, obviously, because that's why we're doing this episode. The 1978 version. I saw the 2006. I saw Man of Steel, and I did not see. Oh, I guess I saw Justice League. I forgot about that with the mustache, the missing mustache.
Yeah, we don't we don't talk
Yeah.
about that.
So that, but I didn't. I didn't watch Dawn of Superman, or no,
Dawn of
Dawn of
Justice.
Dawn of Batman v Superman. I never saw that.
It's Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, I think I don't. To me, like that's what I think of. But when I'm like, oh, who's the live action Superman? Even though I'd never seen this, I was like Christopher Reeves. That's
Reeve.
what.
Christopher Reeve.
That's fine. Whatever. I might add an S here and there. So that's neither here nor there.
The S stands for hope.
That's the S stands for hope. But just because I don't know, I think that he became synonymous with that role. Obviously, the tragedy of what happened to him after with his injury. It's sort of like I think he became synonymous with that. So I think of him, even though I had not seen the movies, and then the animated series because I watched all of that and I loved that. I watched that and Batman the animated series, and I love that too.
Christopher Reeve, Superman, Clark Kent is, I think, the epitome of Superman. Like everything that we want to see in Superman. This leads us to talking about the movie, obviously, but I think the fact that this movie shows him saving people a lot. And I think that's what we need in Superman. Like Superman just saves people, right? Above all else. Like he will someone's falling from a building, but he could easily capture Lex Luthor. He will save that person from the building. And then secondary, he'll do, like his damn job. But I think this movie is great because, and I don't know how they do it. And even just watching it, I don't even feel it. But it feels like they don't spend that much time on the origin and they go right into, all right, he's like 30 now and he's Superman and he's saving people. I know that look. You're giving me a look like half the movie is the origin, but it doesn't to me it doesn't feel like that.
They
But
definitely
it
they
yeah.
definitely left a lot of meat on the bone for the show Smallville, right? For a lot to happen in that.
Well, he technically okay. So this is actually what I don't like about this, and this is kind of where I refer to Smallville, is that in this movie he basically spends 12 years in the Fortress of Solitude learning how to become Superman, and then he just gets like, how do you get a job as a journalist when you have no prior work experience? You've been in the Arctic for the last 12 years. Like how do you like come to Metropolis, the busiest city in the world, and you're like, hey, I want a job. I have no background, no, experience, but I want this job.
Well, so if this movie was taking place today, he would just be like a very prolific blogger when he was in the Fortress of Solitude. He just had like a high speed internet connection. He was just shooting off stories and hot
So
takes.
the penguins today
Yeah.
didn't like that the glaciers melted a little bit more
I
than
don't think
usual.
he wasn't observing the things around him. I think he was talking about other current events.
It is mentioned Perry White does say he's the fastest typist he's ever seen, which is funny because he can do anything at super speed.
It's also, he covers like if I played football, I could score every time or whatever, and which is a big Smallville plot line. But he says in this movie, he's like, "Yeah, I will never lie." And it was like, well, all right, well, does Clark Kent lie? Because like, what
Oh,
happened in that interview?
Clark Kent's a fucking fiend.
What happened in that interview? What yarns did he give to like? Oh yeah, I've written quite a bit in a newspaper you've never heard of.
It's called the Smallville High. That's actually really smart about Smallville is that he had this like all throughout his high school. He didn't do shit, right? Chloe Sullivan did the whole thing, but he just was like, "Yeah, I'm part of the high school newspaper. This will really help boost my resume."
What's also odd too about this? So Metropolis in this is clearly New
New
York
York
City,
City, yes,
and it's almost to the point of where it's like I don't know that New York City exists in this movie.
right.
Like it is Metropolis, you know what I mean?
I
But
like to think of it this way. It's like if New York City does exist, but it is like a subsidiary of New York City. It's like a bigger city outside of New York City, and that's why they're so close to the Statue of Liberty.
so in Smallville, the Metropolis is like an hour away from Metropolis is an hour away from Smallville, right? Like it's in Kansas,
Yeah,
clearly.
yeah. Like Smallville is the rural city of Kansas, and then Metropolis is Kansas City.
Which was, I guess, what clearly like Vancouver from wherever they filmed. But so like when he's like, "Oh, there's a rocket headed to Hackensack, but I should go save the other one first," I was like, "Well, you're in New York City, like clearly just on the way. Why don't you stop that one rocket and then just keep heading to California?"
Well, even a more interesting question is not who's your Superman, but where's your Metropolis? Because in the Henry Cavill ones, Metropolis is like basically New York, and then there's a bay, and then on the other side of the bay is Gotham. But then on the letterhead, when Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne, opens up his letterhead, it says Gotham, New Jersey.
Oh well, that's interesting.
And so it's yeah.
Well, because Gotham is even like a more like kind of complicated history of like it's sort of Chicago, but that's mostly like a Nolan thing because that's also sort of a stand-in for New York, but
One of the
it's a lot Chicago too.
one of the writers of Superman said this: Metropolis is New York in the day. Gotham is Chicago at night.
Okay.
That's basically what it is. And I don't think it actually matters. And I know we get to a bigger picture here, but I don't think it actually matters where it is because I think Metropolis in the name is just this is the city, right? This is the
Yeah,
city.
it
And
is.
it is in the northeastern part of the United States. And that's all you really need to know. And who knows how close to New York it is because he has fucking
Or
super speed.
if New York even exists,
Well, the
right?
Statue of Liberty is there, so something happened with the French, but yeah,
Was
exactly.
the Statue of Liberty in Metropolis?
See, that's the thing. Does he fly Lois Lane around the Statue of Liberty, which is in Metropolis, or does he take her to New York and fly her around and then bring her back? That's, I guess, you can
So
debate
did you
that.
see who one of the writers on this was?
Now, who?
Mario Puzo,
Okay.
the writer of the Godfather books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I guess he gave like a first pass on it, and then when Richard Donner took over, he like had a lot of rewrites going on, but they brought in Puzo just to like, for some gravitas in the writing room,
You come to me
like
on the day of my daughter's wedding and ask me to write Superman?
well, because they also we can go to like alternate casting later on, but they asked James Caan to be Superman at one point, along with like tons of other people.
I'm sure.
But
If
he
you
was
ever
like
go back,
he had like jokes with Brando apparently, where he's like, "Yeah, I'm not." Brando's like, "Come on, do it, I'm in it," and he's like, "I'm not." Yeah, but you don't have to put on that fucking suit.
no, it's cool. Well, we'll talk about that in a second also. But what's interesting about Christopher Reeves is if you go to YouTube and you look at Christopher Reeve auditions or Margot Kidder's auditions for this, It's really cool. I suggest you do that. It's a pretty cool slice of history.
You know what also, so I don't the Batman movies with Adam West came out in the 60s, right?
Yep.
So these movies like kind of owe a lot to that, whereas there are a lot of just like Adam West-esque gags and like, you know what I mean? Like it's like there's a lot of stuff played for jokes with the Ned Beatty character and the way Lex Luthor talks to him.
It is, but it's also like more serious than that. And I feel like in comparison, it's like what we're used to with like the George Clooney, Val Kilmer Batmans. They were used to that. And then all of a sudden you get the Dark Knight. And this is like this is like the 70s Dark Knight, because there are some like pretty serious and darker moments. And you have like Marlon Brando, who's a huge actor at the time, in the movie. So I think you have to sit down in the theater back then and like take it somewhat seriously.
No, I agree. I think it's like kind of like an in the middle a little bit where it's like it has those aspects of it, but then it also has the like the campiness from the, you know, the previous lineage of
It
Batman.
most certainly is campy. Yes.
And so we talked about when I started watching this movie too, Gene Hackman, and I was like, why the hell does that man have hair? And then it's sort
Yeah.
of revealed at the end that these have been wigs. Apparently, Gene Hackman didn't want to shave his head or wear a bald cap throughout filming and didn't want to shave his mustache. And so he agreed to do the bald cap for the final scene. And throughout, he has different hair because you're supposed to know these are wigs, like if you're paying attention. And then the director came to him and was like, "Hey, if you shave your mustache, I'll shave my mustache." And Hackman's like, "All right, that's fair." The director had put on a fake mustache for the meeting and then just like went and took it off.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. Actually, you know, if you watch the second one, Luther is in the second one. Gene Hackman's in the second one. He's not in the third one, but he comes back in the fourth one, and he has hair, and he's never bald at all in the fourth one. So you could tell, like, hey, can you come back for the last one? You don't have to do anything special. We just really want you back.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, as long as, you know, I have to do that shit again. So the other thing, I think you sort of alluded to this, was like the Brando Christopher Reeve. Like, have you seen that clip of him talking about Brando in the movie? Because I just had this. He was on Letterman, and someone asked him with working about Brando, and he's like, you know, I don't worship at the altar of Brando like other people do, because he just said that he kind of phoned it in on this movie, that he like didn't give
Christopher
a shit.
Reeve thinks that Brando phoned it in on this movie.
Well, he refused to learn any of his lines because he said that it would be
Well, that's
better.
true. He had it like read to him. Yeah.
Well, the lines, part of the lines were like written on the diaper. So yeah, and then he had the idea of like, oh, you know what? Why don't we record the rehearsals? Because, you know, if we get it, we get it. You know, maybe we'll get lucky. And then they used the first tape because Brando's like, I'm only doing this one time. There's also a
Yeah.
cool story that Cary Ells worked on this movie, and his entire job was to get Brando to come out of his trailer, and Brando wouldn't even call him the right name, and because Brando also, if he stayed longer than 12 days, got $1 million for every extra day he was there. So he's like, "There's no reason for me to rush."
Well, I told you the story already about my work in LA with like various movies, and I used to, part of my job was to get Bruce Dern out of his trailer.
Bruce Dern, Brando, they're, I mean, quite similar, you know.
Have you heard of, you know who Martin Cove is, right? The
Yeah, I just heard,
Crease.
yeah, the story going around right now.
What, he bit someone, right?
Yeah.
Bill Hader's first job in Hollywood was to drive Crease
Oh no,
around.
yeah. I've
And
heard
he was
that.
like, he made him late, and he got him in trouble
He's like,
for
let's
the
go get a
movie.
milkshake.
Yeah, and then he goes and drinks his own milkshake. God, what? I mean, people are like that in Hollywood, you know, and I feel like Brando is probably, out of those three, Brando is probably the one that can have the most excuse about it.
It like it doesn't necessarily bother me. He does fine in the movie. But I also am perfectly fine with like other people having a problem with it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like
yeah, for sure.
that makes sense too.
Luckily, he's not in the movie very long.
10 minutes.
So we get this opening thing, and we see basically Krypton. Although for some reason they call it Krypton for like half for half of the movie. Like Brando's like, this planet Krypton. But it's Krypton,
That's how they
motherfucker.
pronounce. That's how they pronounce it there.
It's not France, it's France.
Francais.
Francais. Okay, so we get the opening shot of Krypton. It's an ice planet, which is an interesting thing, but it's not ice, it's crystals, right? It's like a high-tech crystal planet. And everything is operated in these crystals, and we come upon this. I guess it's like city like a courtroom sort of thing
Yeah, like
where
a city
they're
council.
judge, jury, and executioner for Zod, his brute, and his winch.
Yeah, if that's what you want to call them. And yeah, they're basically like, well, Jarrell, since everyone else voted yes, it's come down to you, and we're gonna hold you responsible. And then he just immediately throws them off the planet. It's like, all right, well,
And
you're out
and
of here.
then and then it's an interesting thing because we're in this like prosecution, and then this different thing is happening where Jarrell is trying to warn the elders like, hey, the planet is gonna get destroyed. And luckily for Zod, we just saved his life basically. But we gotta get out of here. And they're like, no, and you better not leave, and you better not send any of your relatives off because you're gonna fucking put everyone in a panic, which I think is really shitty.
Well, so they don't. Did you watch like the Donner cut, like the extended director's cut
Of two,
of one?
I didn't think there was a Donner cut of one. There's only a Donner cut of two.
No, there's like a 2001 like DVD where he added a bunch of stuff in.
Oh, then
Apparently,
no.
but so they're like, yeah, don't, if you tell anyone about this, you're gonna start a panic, and that'll be like treason, basically. And he's like, you accuse me of that, but he says, I will not leave, and my wife will not leave. Which is like, I don't know, they didn't really make you promise that. Although in the Donner cut, there's apparently like a scene where they send a police officer to go get Jarrell and stop him from leaving the planet or from sending his son off the planet, which how they find out about that,
You remember in Man of Steel, they really made a big deal about all this in the beginning of the movie with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
And I figure that's kind of maybe what you're talking about, is like they send people to arrest him basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, how would they know all that? Like, is he just like being very mouthy about like, yeah, I'm sending my son off of here? And also, it's like, no one forced you to promise that you wouldn't leave. You can leave too. You could just make a bigger spaceship for yourself.
Well, it blows up. The whole
does.
planet gone. And I do like, and I'll tell you a problem I have with the movie, and it's almost a perfect movie. It's funny when people talk about like best superhero movies, this movie always comes up, but I'm like, there is such a blatant problem in this movie. But no, but I think because it's from the 70s and people are like, nah, it's great. It's, what it is. But when Jor-El explains to him, there's like recordings in the pod when Kal-El is being sent to Earth, right?
Yeah.
And it's being played to him, and he's like, you won't experience time like usual. Like, you're in the pod and you're light years away from Earth, but we're sending you to Earth, and you'll only like, I think he gets in there as a baby and he lands as like 6-7 years old.
Yeah.
But he explains that he doesn't experience time or aging like normal people does, right?
Yeah.
Like they do, except exactly the amount of time it needs to pass to like when we meet him back when he's like in high school. He's high school age.
Yeah, the way they make it seem is like because he's also, they said like by the time you get to Earth, 1,000 years will have passed.
Did they say that?
Yeah.
So they
But
so wait, so they think that they're sending their son in like to the 800s, to the 900 AD.
I don't know what what would that mean? Why I don't think they know where we are on our timeline.
Do they not? I assume they did.
Are you saying because he is Christ? Like
No,
they're sending him
no.
to the world?
We're
to save
2,000 years
Earth?
too early. He does say, he's like, I was sent here to bring truth, justice, and the American way to the people of the earth. And they're like, oh, you're 2,000 years late, buddy.
The other thing that I want to talk about before we just like keep going into this is the Star Wars of the beginning of like this, the how much this feels like Star Wars. And so Star Wars,
I know you said that, but I didn't feel that.
Just like the way it looks. Like, I don't know, like it looked very similar to the Ice Planet, right? But it's not,
I
it's
mean,
not, it's crystals.
everything in the 70s
I just think
sci-fi
that I think
feels
the
like.
sci-fi looks very similar. And the other thing is, I was like, the Superman theme from John Williams sounds so much like the Star Wars, sounds so very similar to Jurassic
Jurassic
Park.
Park. Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently he borrowed elements for Star Wars and Superman from William Korngold's theme song for King's Row. So I guess that's why they share these similarities. But
Hmm.
yeah, like when I hear one of them, I'm like, all right, well, which one is that? What are we hearing
I
right now?
I think over the years, kind of like Mission Impossible theme, I think over the years it's been kind of recomposed in certain ways where it's the Superman theme song, especially when it starts slow, like it's dun 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 dun, 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 right, and you like there's that build, and you don't really get that build in Star Wars. You just kind of get Star Wars.
This if you put the Superman theme song in Star Wars, it would work
I know,
really
of course it
well.
would. Yeah. Although imagine like the Superman theme song is like as you see the T-Rex is like shit, is this motherfucker gonna fly or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he gets to Earth. I was very surprised by how fucking old the Kents were.
So there's a lot of theory, I don't know, backstory about this. It's like you can believe however you want to believe, but I like to put my own backstory on this, and I feel like they tried so long to have kids, they
Yeah, yeah.
couldn't have kids, and now they're old and they never were able to have kids, and then boom, Clark comes along.
No, I think that is. I don't. I think that's actually like partially like canon that they can't have kids. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and they
but
they tried a lot. The mom and pop can't fucked.
apparently they just couldn't figure out that the butt wouldn't produce kids. So,
I also
I did.
like. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I liked that we got to see the council members like running for their lives and dying.
Oh yeah, that was. Oh, we're
It was
back there now. That's
like
enjoyable.
yeah, like the payoff that we didn't get from the end of Jaws 2, if anyone listened to that one, versus this, where we get to see those people die for their, we get their comeuppance.
I should have read this before recording the podcast, but they made a comic book that was supposed to like kind of fill in the gap between 1 and 2 and tell you a little bit more about Krypton. And I think it brings Brainiac into this equation, where was Brainiac part of Krypton's fall? And I think that could have been interesting too.
So I guess in the 70s, you could just show a little child's penis on a movie for plot purposes, and we're just going to allow that.
I mean, if you could even call it that.
What the fuck?
I mean,
It was cold out that day, so I was just oh my god. All right,
I don't know.
moving on.
I've seen bigger, so.
Moving on. I also thought it was weird, moving on quickly, that they didn't just use Christopher Reeves as the high school Clark Kent.
Yeah, if you really think about it, that guy who plays Clark Kent for a long majority of not the majority of the movie, but a long period of the movie.
And I guess they dubbed over his voice with Christopher Reeve. So
that didn't
yeah.
feel like that.
Well,
and apparently he's a dick. Apparently, like if he goes to Comic-Con and you like try to meet him at Comic-Con at his booth or whatever, he's kind of an ass.
Well, good to know. I just feel like the only reason that would maybe make sense is I think Christopher Reeve put on quite a bit of muscle, and so like he just doesn't look like a high school kid. Do you know who trained him to
Christopher
get
Reeve?
jacked? Yeah, to get jacked for this movie.
Is it Kreese from Karate Kid?
No, it's Darth Vader. The guy who was inside the Darth Vader costume.
Okay.
Yeah, not James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones trained Christopher Reeve. That's a good timeline. All right, that's cool. So he was like a coach for Stars or something.
Yeah, he was like a power lifter. Maybe the Darth Vader costume might have been heavy. We get to see Lana Lang, and then we get to see Lois Lane as a little girl and him running next to the train.
That's a theory, nothing proved.
No, I mean, that's pretty much proved. That's pretty much a thing. I read it. First of all, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's
I don't like
totally
how young she is. I don't like how young she is. That's a big age gap. what is he, 18? She's 7. I don't like that at all.
I don't think you know what 7 years old looks like. She's like
Okay,
at
she's
least like
12.
11. Yeah.
Okay.
So then 12 years pass. She's in her 20. She's in her prime when he finds her. So, but apparently Margot Kidder's actually older than him in real life. So, there goes,
Yeah.
it's proof for your theory. Then the dad just has a pretty funny heart attack in the middle of the yard where like no one
It's not
notices.
funny at all. It's not funny at all. Although, he's really
He grabs his arm. He's like, "Oh fuck! All right, guess it's
No.
happening."
It was so sad, dude. And actually, luckily, he had that heart to heart minutes before that happened,
Yeah,
or he would have never known that he should have never saved those kids off the bus.
Yeah, well,
That's
you
a
gotta say
that's a Man of Steel reference.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's probably the best Jonathan Kent death is him just telling him not to save him from a hurricane. It's like, or a tornado, but it's like, dude, I'm so fast, no one would even see it happen.
Yeah. Also, what would have been really smart, right, is if he ran him into the tornado, got behind a car, and just like, I don't know, held down the concrete while it passed, and then they could have gotten at him and be like, "Wow, it's a miracle. We got lucky."
I honestly, Clark, I can't believe I told you to just let me die. Yeah, you did a great job, son.
Now that's the funniest death. And so at that point, what he goes back to it, he gets like a call from his ship, and his ship is like, "Do this thing with the crystal in the Arctic," and yada yada.
So that crystal is green. Is that kryptonite?
No.
It's just they just couldn't come up with another color to make it less weird.
I understand your thing, and we just are gonna gloss over it.
Okay, so it's not okay. Cool. So it's uses maybe kryptonite, probably not. And then him like teaching Superman for 12 years felt like I was on like a Disney ride, like inside the ball at Epcot, or like
at the Wheel of Progress. Yeah.
And he's like, "All right, when you get out of here, it'll have been 12 years." He's like, "Holy shit, really, dude?"
What I also really like is he just has like the costume on. So
yeah,
like, I want to see his reaction to when he first, like, you get that reaction when like Henry Cavill sees the costume for the first time. I want to get that again, right? Where like Christopher Reeve is like, "Why is it so fucking bright?" And he's also like looking at pictures of Marlin and his wife on Krypton, and he's like, "None of you wear this. Like, none of you. Why is mine so colorful?"
Yeah, you guys go all white. I mean, maybe there's like he'll probably get that more dirty. It's easier to clean out other people's blood on the red, I guess.
He thinks he's just tearing people apart limb from limb. He's like, "We told you to enact truth and justice. You have to kill a few people, son."
So we meet Lois at the Daily Planet. I guess they get robbed at gunpoint and he catches the bullet, but just pretends to faint. I do like how much, there's always the like, why would no one, how could you not recognize him? He just parts his hair on the wrong side and wears glasses, but how different the characters are, like how much of a nerd and kind of a loser he is.
Yeah, and he positions himself that way purposefully. Like, think about like your whole persona is making yourself look like the biggest loser. Think about how much like non-ego you must have to be able to pull that off.
Right.
And then also, here's a question for you. You asked me who my Superman is. Who's your Clark Kent? Because I think Henry Cavill does a shit job of like putting the two differences. Like, Henry Cavill's always going to look like Henry Cavill. You could put on a fucking mask and you're going to be like, "Oh, that's fucking Superman." I think Christopher Reeve does a really good job differentiating between the two. I think Brandon Routh also does a good job.
I mean, my Clark Kent is Smallville.
Tom, but you never have to see a difference though.
Yeah, that's fine. That's my guy though.
Okay.
You don't have to like my answer, but it's my fucking answer, so
that's fine. I like it.
Next, we see Ned Beatty. The cops are following him, and then just out of nowhere, Lex just kills this cop by like having the door push him out into a train.
I like how it goes flat against the wall, and then it's like, poof! Like, yeah.
Not a lot of blood splatter, but it's whatever. And then he lives in a pretty cool hideout. So I was like, man,
lair.
This is like not really the Lex Luthor I know is from the animated series and is from Smallville. He had a rich upbringing, a very like well-to-do.
And he's like in a position of power at this point too.
Yeah, and that is not what this is. Although I was reading that at this point in the comics, this is actually a pretty good adaptation of what Lex Luthor was. Like he was as what he was established as, like a
That's
mad scientist.
yeah, and he like describes himself as the most evil, like he wants to be the most evil person on the earth, which
He's
it's so
Gru.
which, what?
He's Gru.
Oh, he's Gru. 100%. And it's funny because usually when they tell you when you write a compelling, interesting villain, you always want to put them in a position that they think that they're actually doing the right thing.
Not here.
Not here. Not here. He's like, I want to be evil. I want to kill as many people as possible. That is my whole goal in life. And also, he what you said is an interesting concept, is where the comic books are at the time, because the character of Superman and all of his companions have grown throughout the years in the comics, and that has I never really thought of it that way. It's like that's reflective on the media that we see of them today.
Absolutely. So, but we find out that his dad was poor, that, and he's like, my dad says land is king, which you don't really know what that means until later on, and then it kind of all makes sense. But as I told you, I was like, this feels like the Joker, or as you said, like the Riddler when we were talking about it earlier, more than like what we now know Lex Luthor to be.
I think at points he is written quite well. Like he is written in a really smart way. One of my favorite lines, oh my god, this is such a brilliant line of Lex. And he turns to the Ned Beatty character and he's like, do you know how the number 200 relates to you and I? Goes, how, Mr. Luthor? It's like, my IQ and your weight.
It's also like 200 pounds today at Ned Beatty's height. You're like, oh, that guy's in pretty fucking good shape.
That's true.
So we go back to the Daily Planet, and there's like a lot of like little subtle jokes. He's like, "Hey, that Loch Ness story, to Jimmy Olsen," and then, "Oh, there's a sex maniac story." Like they just like the movie's actually a little bit edgier than I would have thought. As far as like when Clark and her first meet on top, it's like the sexual tension between them. Like, what color is my underwear?
Yeah.
Like the movie goes for a little bit more than I would have thought, especially being PG. But also, I guess it was either PG or R, and it definitely doesn't go into that territory.
Until he snaps Zod's neck in half.
Just fucking rips it out, like with the spine coming out.
I agree with you. I think it's an interesting look on Superman that he has like needs and wants
Sexual
and stuff,
desires.
and it's
She's like, "Are you normal down there?"
he takes his chance. She's like, eyes blue, height, and he's like 6'4". She goes,
How
are you
how,
big?
how big are you?
How big are you?
I mean,
And he's
tall.
it's great. I mean, I think the chemistry between them is really dynamic. Here's the first biggest issue I have with the movie. I don't like that it implies that he can read her mind. And I don't like that scene at all. And I think the scene of them up in the air flying around is way too long.
It's way too long. It's basically like Aladdin though too, which
Yeah,
this
that's
came
true.
out first, but like let me show you the world. So we get the first of him like turning in to Superman to save people with the copter crash, and there's this little subtle thing where he looks at a phone booth, but it's not a booth, so he can't go in there. So
Right.
instead he goes in like the turnstile door, but he saves Lois, saves the helicopter, and then he's just like, that was great. Let's go do some more of this.
I think there's a lot of like jokes you can make with the campiness and I'm losing the word here. It's not stereotypes. Maybe tropes is the word I'm looking for. The tropes of Superman. Where is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it Superman? The changing the phone booths, the glasses, and him. One of my favorite jokes is in the Brandon Routh one. There's like a picture. Jimmy Olsen takes a picture of Superman flying by, so it's blurry, and Perry White doesn't believe that it's Superman. He's like, "That's a bird," and then Lois looks and she's like, "That's a plane." And then Clark pokes in his head in the door. He's like, "You wanted to see me, sir?"
That's pretty good. So they're also the funny line of like, she's like, "You've got me, who's got you?"
Yeah,
as he's like flying up. So then he
Great.
goes on a little bit of a saving people rampage. So first, he gets the guy scaling the building and then takes him down to a cop. And he's like, all right, cop, you can arrest this guy. And I'm like, what what crime has this guy committed so far? Like, yeah, like obviously he's going to burgle, but what? And then is Superman going to come testify at his trial? Like that dude's got to just get like a lawyer and he's going to be walking like immediately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just keep your mouth shut, dude, and you'll be fine.
I don't know if you'll believe me. Did you see the Brandon Routh Superman?
I did. I don't remember it. I saw it in theaters once.
So it takes place. It's like an alternation of like the second one, but it's all supposed to be the same characters from the first one, right? And so he leaves to try to find Krypton for 5 years, and he comes back and he's like, "No, astronauts thought they saw it, but it is actually destroyed." He's gone for 5 years. He comes back, and everything's changed, right? Lois is married, has a kid. Everything has changed, and he's like, well, someone was talking about Lex Luthor, and he's like, how did I'm like, it's like, I'm pretty sure Lex Luthor has so many crimes against humanity against him. When I put him in jail last time, how did he get out? And Jimmy Olsen says, oh, he called Superman as a witness, and since he didn't show up, the case fell apart. And he's like, how mad do you think that makes Superman? And Clark is like, very, very mad.
Yeah, I literally there's just an ad for the 2025 Superman that just popped up behind me.
Yeah.
So,
It looks good. I'm excited. There's like, I
who's
don't
your
know.
Lois? Because to me, it's the animated series.
It's the animated series.
That's my Lois.
Margot Kidder is a great Lois, but I gotta say, fucking Erica Durance in Smallville is fantastic Lois.
Yeah, yeah. She can never overcome the Kristen Kruk, though. But
Lana
actually,
Lang.
and the animated Lois is playing off of the Margot Kidder character for sure. Like it's
Oh
based
yeah,
off of that.
big time. And I think there's the Lois where it's like, is she a general's daughter, and that's why she has the attitude, or is she a go get 'em reporter, and that's why she has the attitude?
In this, it feels like she's just a go-getter, and
No,
that's why she has
exactly,
that. And she's like
exactly.
much more worldly than Clark, and he's much more, oh shucks, let me take you to dinner. And she's like, ravage me here, so I can think about Superman as
Well,
you take me to
also,
dinner.
I don't understand why she's so hard on him about saying swell. Like, bitch, it's 1970s. Like, people still say swell.
Yeah. So he saves he stops the guy on the building. Then he just takes a boat and parks it in the middle of the street. And it's like, all right, we got to fucking move that shit now, Superman. Thanks.
You know who you sound like? You sound like J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man world. Like, that menace, Superman.
He saves a cat from a tree, but it gets the little girl smacked in the face.
That's true. It's like, hero or menace?
Yeah, he's the worst. I do like when Lex finds out about him. You get the classic view of people watching Superman from the TVs in the store window. And then Lex finds out and he's like, this will just make my grand plan even greater because I'm going to destroy everything that man stands for. And then the funny line of like, hey, Otis, can you put my robe on after I get out of the pool?
Yeah. Oh, geez. Sorry, Mr. Luthor.
So then we get this sexually charged scene where, he's checking her for lung cancer, telling her what her underwear looks like. And then he's like, I never lie. Flies around what feels like forever. And then immediately Clark pops up and she's just like, she's primed, dude. You should have gone for it right then and there. I didn't even know that they were having a date. That just like popped up out of nowhere because she seems to have kept turning him down. Like, this is not what I want.
It's interesting how he, like, people are like, oh, well, Bruce Wayne and Batman, Bruce Wayne is who he is and Batman is who he needs to become. But with Superman, everyone says is Superman is who he is, right? Kal-El is who he is, and Clark Kent is the mask, essentially.
Yes.
But it is interesting how he's not satisfied with Lois falling in love with Superman. He's like, no, she has to fall in love with Clark Kent.
Which is, that's not the real you.
which is not the real you. That's like a fake version that you're putting on, but you're not satisfied. He's like, no, no, no. Pulling pussy as Superman, way too easy. It's like, I gotta be, Clark Kent to do that shit. At least make it a challenge.
How many cheerleaders did he run through in Smallville? That's the real question.
None,
Not a
because of
lot
that
of.
fucking guy. Yeah.
He should just beat the shit out of that dude.
You're gonna love the third one because I think that all comes back.
So she writes the "I spent the night with Superman" story, and then Lex starts going on about these meteors, and then he's like, they would have come from Krypton and they would be lethal. And I was like, that is such a fucking stretch. I mean, he is the most brilliant mind, right? But that he could figure all that out and it be true is a bit of a stretch of deduction to me.
So I was watching this with Taylor, and she says the same thing, and I go, "Yeah, but it's already been established that he's the smartest person ever." I think you just have to believe that, you know, he figured it out. He reads
So
a lot.
then
I don't know.
you just have to accept it. But then he's like, well, the woman says, oh, Superman will see it coming from a mile away. And he said, but not through lead. And it is like, Superman, you probably should have not told people everywhere, like, oh, yeah, I can't see through lead.
Yeah,
Probably keep that to yourself. You kept your age to yourself, but you're like, I'm not going to tell you. Do you think that just because he's like, I know how young Lois is, so I don't want her to know I'm 1,000 years old? Although she thinks Clark's 30, probably. So,
I mean, he's not he's 30.
So the next scene is probably like the most campy, which is the missile theft, the back-to-back missile theft, where the first time Otis gets the vectors wrong.
Yeah.
And he says, would you like to see a very long arm? And I was like, what are you talking about? Are you going to assault him sexually? They also use like Dennis the Menace type music while Ned Beatty is doing this meteor gag of like changing the numbers. It's like
when he gets Miss Tessmacher to like be the damsel in distress and everyone's around her and it's like, we need chest compulsions and mouth to mouth. He goes, stand back, men. I wouldn't ever ask my men to do what I wouldn't be willing to do myself.
He says vigorous chest massage. He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna cop a feel, and hopefully that'll save her. Yeah, and then it doesn't work. So it doesn't work. So then they immediately go after, I guess, the second missile, but it's like the cutting of it is just weird. It makes it seem like it's just the same day, and they've like Wile E. Coyote that just drove down the road and had like a second setup.
It does feel like that, and it's so strange because that is such a small part of the movie that you kind of just like, okay, and then the missiles go off and he has to decide which one to say first and yada yada. But like if you really analyze that part of Lex has to get these missiles, he doesn't just have them. I think making Lex almost like an evil Tony Stark would almost be more interesting in this, being like he's a position of power, he's an arms dealer, he has all these weapons anyways, then he just uses it for evil. I think that could be cool too.
It would also be funny, like they talk about how there was a museum caper and a meteor got stolen. It would be funny to see that because that's also probably didn't go completely well, but they ended up with the meteor. You know, like
it's also in the Brandon Routh movie. So,
well, there you go. I'm not watching that. Please stop telling me to watch it.
I'm not telling you. I know you're not watching it. That's why I'm explaining it to you in vigorous detail.
So Lex sets up this gas to be released and uses a dog frequency, and then when he shows up, he's like, yeah, there's no gas. I just made that up in my mind.
It would have been hilarious if he showed up and then like 1,000 fucking dogs showed up behind him.
He's like, oh, they're with me. I also he's like, my lawyer will be contacting you about the door.
Yeah. He's so smug. And I think the way Gene Hackman plays Lex is so great because he's always so calm. And I think that's what makes a great Lex Luthor is that he knows Superman is so good that he wouldn't outrightly kill him. So there's a sense of like cool, calm, and collectiveness with Lex dealing with Superman, being like, I can literally do anything I want because I know you can't technically kill me, but our wit, you basically have to stop me with your own wit. And he kind of respects Superman because when he meets him, he is kind of smart, right? He like meets him intellectually, at least compared to Miss Tessmacher and the guy. Ned Beatty, right?
Yeah.
Otis.
You know, interesting too. So like Christopher Reeve. Sorry, keep adding that S. Is playing Superman. It's kind of a very like just on the surface kind of character. You have Brando in there who's just barely in it,
Just
doing it.
barely.
He could do it in his sleep, but it's good, right? He's good as Jarrell. But really, like, you can actually kind of see how good of an actor Gene Hackman is in this Lex Luthor part, which it's the
Yeah.
fun part of the movie. Like,
Of
it's the
course.
but he really does like kind of make it his own, and like there's obviously Gene Hackman in there, you can see it, but it is like a different character from what you're used to, because a lot of times when you've seen Gene Hackman in movies, it's like he is just sort of a presence that is kind of being Gene Hackman as like this or that or whatever. But this, like, I was actually pleasantly surprised with how great he was at Lex Luthor, because seeing all the other Lex Luthors throughout my life, and then like Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor is kind of odd to me. But no, he was great.
No, he's great. There's an interesting interview recently with Nicholas Hoult, who's playing the now Lex Luthor.
Right.
He originally tried out for Superman, and he was telling the story on how he was actually like one of the last people to be cast, like in the final, contestants to be
Lex Luthor.
Superman, because he was auditioning for Superman,
Okay.
and he meets David Cornsweet, and he's like he's telling Jimmy Kimmel or someone his thoughts on when he met David Cornsweet, and he's like, oh shit, he's taller than me. Oh shit, look at that jawline. And he's like, admittedly, when he was reading the script for Superman, there were the Lex lines, and he goes, as I'm reading it, he goes, oh man, what wouldn't I actually make like a pretty good Lex? And then he gets the call from James Gunn. He's like, you're not Superman. He's like, okay, I figured. I met that David guy. I get it. And then he's like, but I actually want you to come on as Lex, because unknowingly to you, all the people that I auditioned for Clark Kent, I was simultaneously auditioning them for Lex in my head. So he almost wanted like someone who was like on the other side of the coin when casting Lex.
Yeah, I think Holt is too famous at this point to be Superman.
So that's another thing too, is that I feel like my perfect casting is Superman has to be an unknown and Batman has to be the most fucking famous guy on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, and also historically, that does seem to make sense with what we've seen. Because, like, I mean, Cavill was famous, but not as famous as he is now. Brandon Roth, same thing.
Yep.
So yeah, and then
You know what acting credit Christopher Reeve had before he became Superman? He had one. Do you know what it was?
no,
It was tree number 3 in like a play.
yeah. Well,
And then think about all the Batmans. You got Michael Keaton, you got Ben Affleck, you got Robert Pattinson,
Val Kilmer,
George
George
Clooney. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So you're just basically saying what it should be is what it's always been.
I like it. Look, David Cornsweet's basically no one. He was in a few Netflix things, and now he's Superman. Who should the Batman be alongside him? Should it be Jake Gyllenhaal? I don't know. Maybe.
You put Jake Gyllenhaal in anything, I'll be happy about it. Jake Gyllenhaal is a great Bruce Wayne. So
He just has to be a good Batman.
So he tells him about his master plan with the missiles. Well, he's fucking jacked enough to be it. Tells him about his master plan, and then I love the fact that he could have at any point opened this lead case, but he's like, no, I'm going to make him open it. Like for the theatricality of all of this, I want him to be the one. I want him to do it.
He's sitting on it, and he's like, well, you better just not look into that thing, please.
So then, I'm like, there's actually some pretty good tension here of like, how is he going to get out of this? And then it's immediately like, oh yeah, it's the woman's going to let him out because her mom. It's like, I don't even know how else you could have done it, I guess, right? Like, I feel like the way kryptonite works on Superman changes throughout. Like in this one, it's like, he's so weak he can't lift that off of his neck. In other times, it's like, what is it like the death of Superman where he like lifts a Kryptonian meteor or planet or whatever, and it like kills him as he does it, but he still has the strength to do it?
No, in the death of Superman, there's the villain, Doomsday.
I don't want you to explain the whole thing.
No, I'm just saying there's Doomsday. Doomsday is Kryptonian, and so basically he stabs Doomsday with the Krypton spear, the kryptonite spear, and then he breaks it half, and Doomsday stabs him with it.
Okay. But there is one I think where he like lifts an entire like planet or meteor made out of
Oh, that's
Kryptonia.
That's the Brandon Routh 2006 movie.
Okay, there, motherfucker. But you get what I'm saying? It's like he like based on this movie, he should not be able to do that. It should just crush him, right?
It's encased in like our soil, so he doesn't feel the effects until the soil starts falling off and it gets exposed.
Just go fuck yourself, my guy.
And then
Anyway, so she has to take it off of him. She sexually assaults him in the process, and we're just okay with that.
Yep, because it's a woman.
Yeah, cancel that bitch right now. So anyway, she's like, "Yeah, you wouldn't have let me do it afterwards." And he's like, "You're right."
You know, that
And
same
then-
character is in this new Superman. I wonder if she's going to do that too.
Probably. So then he goes, saves one rocket, but then when they show the map of him saving the rocket, it's heading west, but it's like it doesn't look like he's turning it around. Like it doesn't look like that's what he does. But yeah,
Ignore
anyway,
that.
I guess
Ignore that.
yeah, maybe Hackensack, New Jersey, in this world is in like Seattle, Washington. You know, maybe they just moved the state. Who knows? So the rocket gets that one. Then the other one hits, which I did not expect. And he then pushes the San Andreas fault line back up, just fixes everything.
Yep.
Then he saves the kids on the bridge.
It
Then
doesn't fix everything.
Well, hold on. Dam cracking, I thought was pretty cool. Saves Jimmy Olsen. Then he's like,
All
right,
miniatures. You saw that?
I thought the miniatures looked really shitty.
Oh.
In the there's probably a ton of parts where I was like, oh, that I didn't even notice it was miniatures. But the water rushing over the miniatures looks really horrible. And then him pushing little tiny pebbles in the way also looked really bad.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
But
I thought it was like a kind of a smart way to solve that problem. Because, I mean, didn't you say yourself, literally last episode, that there's nothing that more takes you out of a movie than bad CGI, and you'd rather have like a practical effect in its place?
Okay, but like
So shut the fuck up.
But if I can tell they're pebbles,
I'm saying as long as it wasn't CGI, you should be fucking happy.
I think a lot of this actually looked really good. Him flying for most of the movie, I thought looked great.
You believe a man can fly?
I need to believe it. So then he gets to Lois too late, and she's dead. And he's like, "Fuck it, I'm turning back time." I thought that happened in like the third movie. I didn't realize that happens in the first movie. That
Very famously, it happens in the first movie, and now here's where I have my biggest problem with the movie.
Okay,
I don't like that. I mean, obviously, scientifically, that can't happen that way. But here's where I feel like the movie could have really fixed this issue. When Jor-El is talking to Clark in the Fortress of Solitude, and he's like, "Here are my lessons. I'm going to teach you for the next 12 years." There should have been a scene where Clark is like, "I can also notice I move really, really fast." And he just has to say, "Yes, my son, but you have to be careful because your body doesn't operate in the same time and space as this Earth. So if you move fast enough, you could destroy or set off a ripple of time and space, whatever. So you have to be careful." And he goes, "Okay, Dad, I will. Thumbs up." And then you show him do it, and you're like, okay, he's breaking the rules of Jor-El, right?
Yeah, in this, it seems like either a scene is cut or they're just like, "You guys know Superman, you know he can do this, and we're just gonna put it in here." Like,
I mean, if he can lift up the fucking San Andreas fault line, it's fine.
Yeah, that part I had more problem with. The thing that I find funny about all this is he takes time back to when Lois is alive, but not to stop the missile from hitting the San Andreas fault. He could have just flown for like a few more minutes, and he would have just fixed everything. But he's like, no.
Why didn't he just do it all the way until he has to like open that chest with the kryptonite in it and be like,
Well, but the other thing too is like, yeah, I mean, it creates actually parallel universes where like he's in another place. So I mean, the whole thing doesn't really make sense. But whatever, you know.
Yeah, he saves Lois Lane. There's actually a funny TV show about like people from Metropolis viewing into the superhero lives from like outside being a superhero. and on the TV it was announced Lois Lane is dead, and everyone cheered, and they're like, "Why are you so happy?" And they're like, "Because that means that from now until when Superman reverses time and saves, nothing we do counts. So we can do anything we want because up till he turns back time and saves her, today's a free for all." And they start like robbing places and fucking murdering people, and they're like, "It's about to not matter in like 15 seconds." The time expires. They're lowering Lois's casket, and they're like, "Oh shit, what's happening?"
I kind of vaguely know what you're talking about, but I
It's
don't
called
remember.
Powerless. It was like on like one season on CW or something.
Okay. And then he brings Lex to jail and takes off the wig, and he's like, once again, similar to the guy scaling the building, he's like, "Hey, these are bad guys," and the warden's like, "I trust you, Clark. No trial. We'll just put him in jail for now, and then no bond hearing with the court.
Right.
We're just gonna hold him here.
Right.
Thank
Also,
you."
the speech that that the warden gives is like, "Superman, you have once again saved the day, and I and every fellow American here just want to thank you." And it's like, okay. I do like how Lex Luthor has the reputation of being a criminal mastermind. Like, how does one go about doing what he does and like slowly gain that reputation throughout life?
Without being, I mean, he's the Riddler.
I guess so.
So Spielberg was offered the chance to direct this, but chose instead to do Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1941.
I feel like Spielberg's version would have just been like a lot of Clark on the Smallville farm dealing with like
His mom cheating
his
on his
mom
dad.
cheating on his dad. He's like, "No, Ma can't. Why?"
Jonathan goes to Clark, "Why doesn't she love me?" And then Clark keeps murdering her lovers.
I think, isn't there a movie kind of like that called Brightburn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should do that one time. I've never seen it.
I think that's actually produced by James Gunn.
So, I think you're right. Richard Donner had shot 75% of Superman 2 when he was fired by the people in charge. Pre-production for this movie began in Rome, and then they had to scrap it once they realized Brando could not go to Italy because there was a warrant for his role in Last Tango in Paris. I don't know. I haven't seen Last Tango in Paris, so
There's a warrant for his role?
yeah. No, there was a warrant for his arrest for an obscenity charge based on what he did in Last Tango in Paris.
And you don't know what he did.
I'm probably showed his cock, I would guess.
I
don't know.
flashed my penis, my perfectly shaped penis.
Yeah. Paul Newman was offered the choice of playing Superman, Lex Luthor, or Jor-El for $4 million. So they're like, "Here's $4 million. You can play any of the characters." And he's like, "I'm not doing any of that." So
That would have been different.
It would have. Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, and James Caan all turned it down. Redford
Jor-El or Lex Luthor?
It says the movie's title role. I'm going to guess that's Superman.
Clint Eastwood is... All right. Make my day.
So Redford wanted too much money.
Unlucky punk.
Eastwood said he was too busy. Eastwood as Superman is almost as crazy as like Nick Cage as Superman. Yeah. So then,
no.
After the success of Rocky, Sylvester Stallone lobbied hard for Clark Kent. He really wanted to play it. He blamed Brando for keeping him out of the role, but then the director later on was like, "Yeah, it was me. I wanted an unknown. I met with him. He really wanted it, but I just wanted an unknown."
Stallone as Clark.
I think it works.
What?
I think it works.
So it's just like, fuck.
I think it's fine. So Gene Hackman's brother
stand for truth, justice, and the American way.
So apparently,
All right, I'm done.
You're gonna keep doing this.
I'm
You
done.
should have said Lois. You should have screamed Lois.
Lois!
All right. So you know when the young Clark Kent jumps in front of the train?
Yeah.
So he was on on a rope system or whatever, and it kind of threw him in front of the train, and he was about to get hit. One of the like stunt guys or whatever that worked on it pulled him out of the way so he didn't get hit. The guy's name is Richard Hackman. He was Gene Hackman's brother who saved him.
Wow. He should have been Superman.
Yeah. George Kennedy, Jack Nicholson, and Gene Wilder were considered for the role of Lex Luthor.
Dude,
Gene Wilder?
Gene Wilder would have been excellent.
It's like, I love Hackman in this, but Gene Wilder, I'm actually like mad that I don't get to see it.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I
And
mean, AI is getting more advanced every day. We could be there soon.
So, obviously Jack Nicholson, if he gets this, doesn't do the Joker. I think the Joker is like a way more iconic role than him as this. So,
Oh, yeah, shit, you're right. Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman apparently turned down Lex Luthor.
Dustin Hoffman would have also been a really good one.
Correct. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman can do pretty much, most things. He
Dustin
probably couldn't be
Hoffman as
like,
Lois Lane would have been really amazing.
yeah, he probably can't be like a Jack Reacher or anything because he's too short. So here are the numerous actors considered for the part of Superman: Muhammad Ali, Warren Beatty.
No, you're lying. You're not Muhammad Ali.
Well, I just read it off the IMDb facts. It doesn't have to be true. I just get to say it. Charles Bronson, James Caan, Sam Elliott, Dustin Hoffman, who is also apparently going to be Lex, Burt Reynolds, Chris Christopherson, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, Redford, Schwarzenegger, Jeff Bridges, Christopher Walken. All right.
No, do your Walken impression and say truth, justice, and the American way. Go ahead.
I have to work on my Walken because the only thing I can say is Walken is wow. And like that's
No, I stand for truth and justice and the American way.
you sounded closer to the guy from The Room than you did to Walken right there.
You're tearing me apart, Lois.
So John Voight and then Sir Elton John, which I don't like. What the fuck were we doing there? I don't get that at
He
all.
would literally be a rocket man.
So Charlton Heston was considered for the role of Jor-El, and Steve McQueen was considered, but he was rejected because he was out of shape. And that's pretty. I guess Patrick Wayne, who I've never seen, but he's the son of John Wayne, was offered the role but had to drop out because of his dad at the time. John Wayne had cancer. So
You listed so many celebrities that are actually insane, like Arnold and Sam Elliott and like
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali. I mean, some of those are so crazy.
I didn't know we were doing DEI casting in the 70s, but whatever.
Well, there's that comic book where Superman and Muhammad Ali fight, and Muhammad Ali knocks Superman out on his ass. I think Kryptonite is involved.
Yeah, he's like his gloves. What was his gloves laced with?
I have an interesting casting fact for you. So, in the third Superman movie, the same actress who plays Lana Lang in this movie does not reprise her role as Lana Lang, who's a much bigger part in the third movie. Would you like to care to guess who becomes Lana Lang in? It's not Kristen Crook in the Superman in the third Superman movie.
Well, you said it's not Kristen Crook, so I have no idea.
It's the same actress who plays Ma Kent in Smallville.
Oh,
Is Lana Lang in the third movie?
well, and that actually works. She kind of looks like the girl from the first one,
Right.
Ma Kent in Smallville, a babe.
I mean, in Superman 3, a babe.
All right, there we go.
There we go.
Also, I just want to make it clear that I was tongue in cheek about Ali being a DEI casting. I was making a joke. So anyway, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David,
And this is Alain.
and I finally watched Superman the movie.